So now in this video, we're going to look at how do we graph multiple cycles of the sine and cosine function. So we're going to start with the sine function, and anytime we graph, we're going to start it the same way. We list out the important information. So starting with amplitude here is 3, that's the number in front of the trig function. The period is always 2 pi over b. B is the number in front of x. There's no number there, so b is 1. So 2 pi over 1 is just 2 pi. We don't have any shifts or anything, so we are good on that. And then our scale is always period divided into 4 equal parts. So 2 pi over 4. Our scale is pi over 2. So that is what we're going to use to graph. So now when we graph, we create the xy axis. We're going to use the scale, so pi over 2, to label our x-axis. So this is 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2 is pi, then we have 3 pi over 2, and then 4 pi over 2 is 2 pi. So because we want to graph multiple cycles, this is enough to graph one cycle. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we want to graph another cycle, we need more points. So I'm actually going to extend this, and we're going to do 4 more. So 4 pi over 2, this becomes 5 pi over 2, 6 pi over 2 becomes 3 pi, then we have 7 pi over 2, and 8 pi over 2 becomes 4 pi. So when you graph multiple cycles, you need to continue on this pattern. Now for the y-axis, we use the amplitude. So we're going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and then down 1, 2, 3. And everything is labeled. So now when we go to graph and when we go to mark our critical points, we still want to look at, okay, this is sine, it's a positive a, so we still want to follow that pattern. So typically we would do this, okay, we have an x-intercept, then a maximum, then an x-intercept, then a minimum, then an x-intercept. So that is enough points for one cycle. If we want to do more than one, we continue it on. So x-intercept, maximum, x-intercept, minimum, x-intercept. So when we create multiple cycles, they overlap. So this point is the first point of the second cycle, and it's the last point of the first cycle. So now when we connect the dots, we have 2 cycles. So you could continue on if you did 4 more points, continue on with the pattern, maximum, intercept, minimum, intercept, and you could do as many as you want as long as you have enough dashes along your x-axis. So now I'm going to show you same thing for cosine. We start with our info. So a here is 1 because there's not a number in front of my trig function. The period here is 2 pi over 2, which is just pi, which makes my scale pi divided by 4. No shifts or anything. So now when we go to graph this, we are going to start with a scale of pi over 4. So 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and then 4 pi over 4 is pi, and once again we continue. 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4 is 3 pi over 2, 7 pi over 4, 8 pi over 4 is 2 pi. We're going to continue on. 9 pi over 4, so 9. 10 pi over 4 is 5 pi over 2. 11 pi over 4, and 12 pi over 4 is 3 pi. So now I'm going to show you what it looks like if you wanted to do 3 cycles. So A is 1, a 1, a -1. I forgot to put on the other ones, the asterisks that you can put here to remind yourself maximum, minimum. And then when we go to plot the points for cosine with a positive A, we start at a maximum. So maximum, intercept, minimum, intercept, maximum. And then we continue on, intercept, minimum, intercept, maximum, intercept, minimum, intercept, maximum. So every time you move over an interval, it should be at a different place. You should never have 2 points that are right directly next to each other. That just won't happen. So then you connect, and here this would be 3 cycles of our cosine function. So as you see, it should make this nice wave. Obviously, you want to connect the points. Well, I did not connect that point there. And that is how you create multiple cycles. You can also create them in the negative direction if you wanted, and it does go on forever, so you can create as many as you'd like.